lot. Yeah.
Possible. But we have people funding this IBM. Remember the guy that Cyber Reason hired for their public sector thing, a former high-ranking IBM guy, the current chief information officer of the CIA that worked alongside that guy at Cyber Reason. She was right before joining the CIA, was a top executive at IBM Federal. And then McAfee, we talked about them earlier because the guy on Cyber Reason's board, Dave DeWalt, used to run them. Raytheon, which of course the Secretary of Defense is a former Raytheon lobbyist. AT&T, funding them. I mean, a lot of the same companies. Hewlett Packard, remember the Hewlett Foundation funding a bunch of this stuff. Intel Corporation, who's very much tied up with the Israeli government. Royal Dutch Shell, like oil companies are funding this stuff. Qualcomm, who we didn't really talk about, but they pop up a little bit, in Verizon. And there's a couple other ones, but I mean, those are the main ones. So I only have one window left. So we're mostly done. Anything you want to add before I move on?
No, go ahead. I just think that all these points are continuing to build the picture that we're painting along the way, and you're doing an excellent job. So it's very, very
yeah,
clear.
well, it's a lot to lay out. So, the idea, I'm sure like a lot of these videos are really dense for some people. The idea is to like lay it all out there, and then we can go about the business of making easier to digest like summary videos. But the idea is to have it all laid out. So when I make a claim, like, I don't know, hey, I think, Cyber Reason's a front for Israeli intelligence, I can refer you to the first video we did, and you can see exactly why I think that.
Well,
right?
on that point, before you get into this next slide, I keep seeing that pop up. And by the way, that's something I constantly get accused of, is, doing too long, or, and that's just, that's something that tends to happen when you're covering so much information. And what I argue is that people out there that go, oh, you need to make these shorter. It's like, look, if you're arguing that we need to break up certain parts, that's one thing. But to argue that we should be fitting in this much information into a 5-minute video is just not possible unless you want to be told what to think. And that's the point. That's what people that come out and just kind of rattle off what you should be thinking, and you're just taking out the talking points. You're not learning anything. You're not understanding why this is important. And that's the problem with mainstream media and arguably a lot of the independents that do similar stuff. And that's why this is so valuable. Now, we will try to break this stuff up and make smaller parts, but as she's saying, this is this is a walking you through the information in I mean, if we're doing 3 videos now on this thing, let's not pretend like that can be a 15-minute video, and I know people out there understand that. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. There's a lot here going on.
Yeah, there is a lot here going on. So there's a lot of these different conferences that go on in the U.S. cybersecurity conferences, where basically these conferences connect the vendors, the people that pay groups like this, and they bring together people from the private sector and the public sector so that they can market their cybersecurity software, okay? And so this is one, Data Connectors. They've been having cybersecurity. They have different summits around the country, different cities. They had one in Philadelphia this year, but I mean, it's not just Philadelphia, right? I just have this one up because I wanted to point out something about this lady. But what's important are their vendors. Agari, who we just pointed out, one of the top funders of Global Cyber Alliance. We also have Cyber Reason. I don't know what this is, but I feel like it just reminds me of Cthulhu and is super creepy in a logo. Anyway, this thing I talked about earlier that was part of Global Cyber Alliance. Here's their Philadelphia chapter participating directly. Okay, Dark Trace, who you need to know about these guys. We'll be talking about them in a second. Ultra shady. Okta, remember CTI League? One of their co-founders is the Okta guy. And RSA, we've talked about them quite a bit, Israel stuff. Tenable, this is Amit Yoren's company. We'll be getting into them in a moment. So anyway, I just wanted to point out this lady because we were talking about, our next video is going to be a lot about Philadelphia. And we talked about, right, how Cyber Reason worked directly with the Secret Service. So I just wanted to point out the lady that's giving this talk in Philadelphia of the Secret Service, and Cyber Reason is one of the sponsors of this thing, because it is kind of interesting to see her history. So she has been part of the Secret Service for 20 years. She was part of the protective detail of Bill Clinton after he left office, and she traveled around the world with him in support of the Clinton Global Initiative. Interesting, when you keep in mind that the Clinton Global Initiative, allegedly, it was Jeffrey Epstein that came up with that, and Ghislaine Maxwell was a member of it, right? And, it's just odd. So anyway, she's one of the main people at the Secret Service's Philadelphia field office. But you know, well, I'll bring her up again in the next video. Also, the same one is teamed up with our pals at DHS's CISA and Chris Krebs and all of those guys, giving talks pretty recently about critical incident response. We have yet another group like Data Connectors, but this is the official cybersecurity summit that, if you look here, what they exist to do are exclusive conferences, where they connect senior executives responsible for protecting their company's critical infrastructures with cutting edge technology providers, okay? And by the way, this one, forgot to mention, this one's about connecting the government officials, and private sector people, and also like people that protect specific cities with cybersecurity stuff. If you look at the bottom, they have people like the Chief Information Officer of Baltimore and stuff. So it's like cities, and so they're a little different, right? But what's important here are the sponsors. So they had one in Philadelphia, which focuses specifically on executives, and this is public and private sector. I want to stress that, okay? In Pennsylvania, Southern New Jersey, and Delaware, they do this one by regions. They essentially, every single one that they've had this year has the same sponsors. You'll notice some similarities to the last one. Darktrace, the title sponsor. This is freaky when you find out what Darktrace is and who's behind it. Then we have Checkpoint, Unit 8200, Unit 8200, Amit Yoren's company. We'll talk about Tenable in a second, and Verizon. And what do you know? Once again, it's Okta, RSA, and Cybereason.
Wow.
Seems to just be the same people sponsoring the stuff, being like, hey guys, buy our, you know, just running all these conferences that are getting their software put on companies and cities and states and the government.
And to the average person, it looks like a bunch of different entities all chiming in and coming to the same conclusion, when it's really just these same money people driving it from behind the scenes. It's the analogy for our whole society, it seems. Now,
Philadelphia, a week before the election, had a pretty fancy Chief Information Officer forum. So whereas this one, these guys and the one I showed earlier have stuff around the country, this one was just Philadelphia, okay? So they're interesting when you look at, I mean, they had some big names, right? Google's principal economist was here. Anyway, I'm just trying to scroll down so you can look at the sponsors. Okta, Darktrace, and Google.
Cloud, great.
Okay, so this makes it really important to look at who is Darktrace. Well, let's start with their advisory board.
The cloud aspect's really important too, not just Google, but the cloud in general, because remember, we were just talking about how that aspect of using the cloud storage with all of these things is a common theme I'm noticing.
Yes, well, I mean, if it's on the cloud, they have access to all of it, don't they?
Yeah, right, so, exactly.
And most of these cybersecurity AI people, they all use Amazon's cloud, most of them. Some use Google Cloud, but I mean, it's one or the other, essentially. Or they'll have functionality for Microsoft's, Google's, and Amazon's, which is why you see a lot of those same companies partnering with all these guys, like Carbine 911 that we talked about yesterday. Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, all partners of those guys. Anyway, so who is Darktrace? Well, this is their CEO and co-founder, Poppy Gustafsson. It's a fun name.
Yeah.
Doesn't she look so friendly? It's like she walked out of a Banana Republic catalog. Oh, I bet she's a real nice lady. Anyway, so this company is just so nuts. I don't even know where to begin. Basically, as you can see here, it was founded in 2013. The founders were leading a team of a world-class, or were leading a, oh, they used team twice, so that's not just me reading it wrong. They were leading a world-class team of mathematicians from the University of Cambridge and AI experts who were working on groundbreaking applications of AI, experimenting with giving machines a sense of self.
Yikes.
These guys were trying to make self-aware AI. They were trying to make the singularity. They weren't trying to make a cybersecurity product. They were trying to make self-aware artificial intelligence. Okay, so keep that in mind, because basically what happened, well, first they're saying, this is how they explain what Darktrace is now. So now they say over 4,000 organizations around the world rely on their AI cybersecurity technology, okay, against the backdrop of accelerated digital transformation, we expect this technology to go mainstream. I mean, as you'll see in a second, these guys are all, this AI team trying to make the singularity got in bed with spooks from the UK. And so like they have some foreknowledge probably of some stuff that's coming down the line. And they're saying, we expect our technology to go mainstream because we're experiencing accelerated digital transformation.
Let me ask you this, just to float a thought before you keep going. Think about how the timing. It's very interesting to see they're focusing on the singularity and then just kind of switching over to this. You wonder whether or not something did happen, right? Whether something was achieved that's not really made public, and why this is some kind of why. I mean, people wonder, and I do too, why all of a sudden this whole agenda was just kind of jammed in at once, and you wonder whether something changed. I mean, how is it possible that this kind of worldwide manipulation can take place without something like that? Just a thought to float,
Yeah, I mean, I have things I suspect once we get through what dark trace is, what may be going on here, because there's definitely some ulterior motive. Because if you're a bunch of researchers at Cambridge or whatever trying to make the singularity, and you're contacted by people from British intelligence, GCHQ, who are frustrated with legacy approaches to security, and that's why they come after you, because you're making the singularity. I mean, clearly there's something going on here. Anyway, going back to what dark trace is, they say that their AI takes action against cyber attacks, and usually that action will be taken without the human in the loop. And in other parts where they talk about dark trace as opposed to supervised machine learning where there's a human overseeing the AI, dark trace has no supervision. They let their AI run wild and do what it wants.
Wow.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, here's what their CEO is saying. For us, this is just scratching the surface. We see a future where even higher level thought processes like red teaming and cyber risk analysis could be executed by AI. So what Ohad Zadenberg is doing, saying we blame Iran, they see a future where all of that will be done by artificial intelligence. That's nice.
Jeez. The Skynet is the limit.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just,
it was actually a pretty good joke.
Well, yeah. it's just so crazy how, this whole thing is something that has, I mean, artificial intelligence as it's alone and what that could mean is like world changing. So the fact that this stuff is being driven in with this just kind of foggy for your betterment is just incredible. Like and not just Americans, but as a world society. And obviously there are a lot of people speaking out about the dangers of this, but it doesn't seem to be addressed by any actual leaders of the world. And that's telling, actually.
Right. So, I mean, these guys are very clearly trying to make the singularity, as you'll see in a second, but basically their official history, right? So this world-class team of mathematicians at Cambridge trying to give machines a sense of self, and then they join forces with cyber experts from British intelligence, GCHQ. Okay. Who work with the NSA and Unit 8200 and all that stuff. It's the UK's equivalent of those agencies. Okay. So they say our autonomous response technology is capable of fighting back against attacks at computer speed on behalf of humans. So no humans are involved, but they do it on our behalf. They're our benevolent overlords, I guess. Anyway, they add, most recently, our research and development team have made it possible for our AI to interrogate its own findings. In other words, instead of human beings looking at the outputs of the AI and applying their human understanding, AI is now taking care of this too.
Ooh, that is some chilling stuff.
Their first customer was Drax, one of the UK's largest power providers. They're also on the NHS, the National Healthcare Service of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom got hit, their NHS got hit by a big hack that they said were cyber criminals, and then Dark Trace got smushed onto them and they adopted it, and then Dark Trace put out these press releases saying, we stopped the ransomware attacks this time, so we have a proven track record of cybersecurity, and now they're on like a bunch of really critical UK systems. I'm not sure what they're on in the US, but they're clearly making some sort of push, sponsoring all these cybersecurity innovation things. I mean, just really out of control. So anyway, like what I was saying earlier about how they want AI to replace people like Ohad Zadenberg that say, it was Iran, it was Russia, it was China. we are, that she says, last year we were responsible for another world first, the cyber AI analyst, an AI technology which applies contextual understanding to launch a full-blown investigation into a security incident. Today, that AI is detecting the most sophisticated attacks out there, including those from the sophisticated Chinese cyber espionage group, and blah, 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 and even the alleged Russian ransomware gang, Evil Corp. Remember, they're alleged Russian, so, whatever.
The issue with this level of it too, like, if we're saying, where there singularity hasn't been reached, so you're still, using, it's still based on the data that's being put into it. And so we're being these people behind the scenes putting in the information that then drives, like, they're arguing that if this comes to the conclusion that Iran did it, they're going to use that to be like, well, the AI, it said it's we can't argue with that, but they're behind the scenes putting in the data that drives that decision, right? And that goes with any kind of model you are talking about, unless you're actually discussing some kind of singularity, which is not this case. So this is easily manipulatable, and they use the misunderstanding of what that kind of artificial intelligence is to manipulate the average person. That's right. That's where I think this will be going. Is what you're outlining right here will be the next prediction level, where people are told the AI discovered this, and we just take it at face value, or like, you're going to be sick tomorrow, take it at face value.
Right. So these guys, because of what happened in the NHS and what I mentioned about how there was the hack and then Darktrace came on and then they promoted, here it says it fought back against the WannaCry hack at several NHS trusts. Okay, so they can, after the hospitals in the US are hacked by Iran, a company like this can say, and look, well, we stopped that type of attack at the NHS and we can do it for you now. And then what do you know? They'll be all over US hospitals. They're creepy, unsupervised AI that is, they're trying to make self-aware, and Skynet, and they're putting on all these critical infrastructure systems. Yikes, dude, this is dangerous.
Yeah.
People should be looking into this company, and I'll show you why. Check out their advisory board. This is where I'm talking about the software side of 9/11. You need to look at some of these people, specifically Alan Wade. We'll get to him in a second. Advisory board, Lord Evans of Weardale, the fun name. Anyway, he was director. Yeah, doesn't he seem friendly? Oh, man. Director General of MI5. Okay, that's like one of the biggest guys in UK intelligence during that period of time, from 2007 to 2013. He was there for 33 years.
Or he's still there.
I don't think he is anymore. I'm
implying the point is that the people that work in these kind of intelligence communities or intelligence positions, it's an honest question to ask whether or not he actually stopped working for them in 2013. You know what I'm saying? And that's something we pretend like that's just outside.
Well, a lot of these people maintain their ties to intelligence agencies even after they leave, right? So yeah, for sure. So what's interesting about him, he was appointed to the Security Services Management Board of UK Intelligence, right, as Director of International Counterterrorism in 2001, 10 days before 9/11. Remember how the BBC, the state media arm of the UK, reported the towers at the World Trade Center collapsing like 20 minutes before they actually collapsed?
Yep. And I don't think they ever even
think this guy had some sort of look at that appointment.
Yeah. No one's ever actually made an intelligent argument for why that's the way they just said, she just misspoke. That's the only argument I've ever heard about that. And that's crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, this guy is also a director at HSBC, the bank that's been tied to money laundering and drug cartels and a bazillion different crimes. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Professor Nick Jennings from the Imperial College at London, responsible for all the fake models of lockdowns and all that justified lockdowns at the beginning anyway, and all of that stuff. And yeah, that guy. He's the chair in artificial intelligence for those guys. He's also the UK government's current chief scientific advisor for national security. And a member of the UK government's Artificial Intelligence Council, which I'm assuming is similar to the National Security Commission on AI in the US. I'll get to Alan Wade in a second because that guy is just, whoa, dude. You'll see why. Amber Rudd had 3 different cabinet or ministerial roles in the UK government over 4 years under 3 prime ministers, including being Home Secretary, overseeing the UK's response to terror attacks. and was involved in a international industry-led, private sector-led response to removing radicalizing material on the internet, which endures, which is still around, the Global Internet Forum to Counter Terrorism, so censoring speech. A senior advisor to Teneo. If you don't know what Teneo is the consulting firm run by Doug Band, the Clinton family bagman that went on a bunch of flights on Jeffrey Epstein's plane with Bill Clinton. And you know who else is a big guy at Teneo these days? Jerome Hauer, a key 9/11 suspect involved in the Dark Winter simulation, and a current board member on the board of directors of Emergent Biosolutions. You should go and read the article, A Killer Enterprise in thelastamericanvagabond.com, if you want to know more about Jerome Hauer. And then we have this guy, Dr. Mike Lynch. I won't go into him too much, but he describes himself as Britain's most established technology entrepreneur and the UK's answer to Bill Gates. So he's clearly a great guy. He's actually in a bunch of legal trouble, actually, so much so that Goldman Sachs declined to invest in Darktrace when they went public, because this guy is has made a lot of bad deals. Anyway, doesn't matter, I guess. He's in bed with the spooks, the right spooks. Anyway, Alan Wade. Alan Wade is the only American here. He had a 35 career in the Central Intelligence Agency, including alongside Robert Bigman. Right, so Robert Bigman, the Cyber Reason Advisor, Chief Information Security Officer at the CIA, while Alan Wade was Chief Information Officer at the CIA. Yes, that means they worked closely together, and this is, they're involved with these AI cybersecurity companies now. That should tell you something about where these guys see things going, okay? So there is a lot that they leave out of Alan Wade in this tiny little bio. There's a lot they don't tell you. So what I'm going to go into now hopefully I'll get to it at some point. It was supposed to be in my series about the Maxwell family, Ghislaine Maxwell, Robert Maxwell, the twin sisters, the brothers, all of this stuff, because Alan Wade co-founded a company with Christine Maxwell. I wrote about in the first part of that series how Christine Maxwell was put in charge of the front company selling the bugged Promise software that had a backdoor for Israeli intelligence. Robert Maxwell, an Israeli spy, sold that software to sensitive US laboratories through a front company based in California that Christine Maxwell was put in charge of, okay? So Alan Wade, while he's an active CIA officer, creates a company with Christine Maxwell right after Christine Maxwell and Isabel Maxwell, her twin sister, and Ghislaine had a stake in this company too, sell their previous internet company, Magellan, which had ties with Microsoft and Bill Gates and all this stuff. I'll put the link to that article in the show notes. But Kiliad, the company Christine Maxwell and Alan Wade founded together, described as the company that solved 9/11 after the fact by connecting the dots that couldn't be connected because of the failure of imagination problem.
Oh, that aged horribly.
Well, Kiliad, well, here's the thing. Kiliad was created before 9/11, a couple years before 9/11. And then they claim being influenced by the Challenger disaster in 9/11, they started retooling or adapting their company to create the best counterterrorism software that would connect all the dots.
I just argue that anybody connected the dots of the 9/11 story in this field is a joke. That's what I mean. Like looking back.
Yeah.
The whole report is.
The official story of 9/11, right, is the real conspiracy theory.
Right.
So that means, this software then created like a totally ludicrous conspiracy theory. But I mean, this is their sales pitch, right? We solved 9/11, like we're the answer and we'll prevent it from happening again. So use us on all of your stuff. And so Kiliad, despite being founded by Alan Wade and Christine Maxwell, who was involved in one of the biggest software spies, probably the biggest at that point, software spy scandals in US history, okay, their company is put on all these databases after 9/11. I'll read a little bit from here really quick. Kiliad's founders, Christine Maxwell, Alan Wade, and another guy whose name I'm forgetting. Sorry, it's been like the Epstein stuff I had to sort of put on the back burner for a little bit, because there's a lot of other stuff going on, obviously. Anyway, Kiliad's founders were influenced by the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster and the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Investigations into both events concluded that information stored in incompatible databases and documents maintained by different departments and organizations could have allowed managers and officials to prevent those disasters. Because basically after 9/11, the intelligence community, including the CIA and other groups, said that the reason 9/11 happened was because not all of the national security databases were linked. And so they pushed after 9/11 to remove the quote unquote firewalls between different departments, essentially giving, you know, groups like the CIA access to all of the databases of all of the different parts of the national security state and beyond, right? So,
which really could be seen as the first part of what's happening today too, like the extension.
It's an extension of it.
Ongoing plan to, yeah. I mean, it's very clear. I mean, who knows if that's actually the case, but it's clear that they're trying to achieve the same things today, just at a different level.
Right, right. So efforts to solve this problem, the connecting the dots problem. Oh, sorry, I missed a sentence. But there was simply no existing technology to connect the dots across so many incompatible systems and organizations. Efforts to solve this problem hastened development efforts within Gilead, allegedly immediately after 9/11, but it seems like they had it set up before then, because this company was set up like tailor-made for this before 9/11, not unlike Carbine 911 that's ready to ride to the rescue after whatever is going to happen in the 911 call centers and all this stuff. I mean, Gilead was like a company just like that, but for 9/11, right? So anyway, efforts to solve this problem hastened their efforts at Gilead and drove the first deployment of Gilead software within the US intelligence community to create a virtual knowledge environment across distributed information stovepipes, databases, and applications. It's worth pointing out, this is essentially what Promise did. The Promise software tried to do. Gilead was an updated version of that. Alan Wade later becomes involved in the creation from the CIA side of the successor to Gilead, today called Palantir, which we've talked a lot about. Yes, Alan Wade himself, before he left in 2005, was involved in the CIA rise, really, of Palantir, because Palantir, for its first 3 years of existence as a company, worked directly with the CIA. The CIA was their only client. They visited Langley, Virginia on a regular basis to receive feedback from CIA officials who guided the development of that software. And Alan Wade was one of those officials until he left because he was chief information officer of the CIA. So this is the guy that connects Promise to Palantir. This guy, along with Christine Maxwell. I mean, whoa.
Yeah, that is very, very. That's a very important connection. I mean, it's so many of the things. Here's something that popped into my head that I think is interesting in the analogy with, we're talking about the CIA and everything else. That, remember that, and that I would think speaks to that this is something that's been a general agenda that's been here much longer than even this 9/11, COVID-19. That, remember that the way that the federal government was justified was suggesting that, well, criminals just run to the other state and then we can't track them down anymore. It's the same exact argument all the way back then, that we need more control across state lines because these people just jump, whether that was even a legitimate argument then. So now we're at the point where they're going, well, now we have all this, but now they, you know, the firewalls between the information we're trying to send. Well, now it's the same argument, right? And it even ties back to Hoover and the CIA and the same exact thing. So you wonder whether or not this has always been the same agenda that's just evolved because of technology's evolution. It's an interesting thought.
Well, keep that in mind when we get to what Gilead was doing in its later years before it folded. But I just wanted to point out really quick that Gilead was, you know, used by the FBI, the Office of Director of National Intelligence. They were promoted by the 9/11 Commission. Okay, and then they were on the databases of DHS, the CIA, NSA, and the Pentagon, also the FBI, their counterterrorism database and task force run by Gilead, tied up with the Maxwell family, man. I don't know. You know how it's weird that we haven't seen any pictures ever of Ghislaine Maxwell supposedly in prison?
Right.
Her sister, seemed to have been pretty powerful, as a lot of other people in her family. Guess no, we're not going to pay attention to them. Anyway, this is just an article pointing out how Alan Wade, chairman of the board of Gilead, they brought in Christine Maxwell as a temporary CEO in 2013. But what's interesting here is that not long after this, Gilead ended up folding. They're not around anymore. Okay. But Alan Wade was the chairman of the board of Gilead even while he was at the CIA and after he left. Remember, 2013, The year Gilead folded is the year Darktrace was founded. Okay. But Gilead, right before it was going out, it decided to fold, focusing on the healthcare market. Interesting. With an innovative solution offered in partnership. They were doing intelligent search and information extraction for healthcare, and focused on penetrating the government market and all this stuff. But they were making a push into healthcare around this time, when a lot of the companies we're talking about now, like Cyberease in 2012, Darktrace 2013, a lot of these started popping up in this period. They clearly moved from one phase of companies to another one, in my opinion. Anyway, we've also talked on the show before about total information awareness and how that discredited surveillance total surveillance effort of the American people, and everything they do, and all of their data was, dismantled because of public pushback, because it was going to, as the mainstream media even admitted, eliminate privacy for every American citizen. But it's worth pointing out why General Poindexter, who was the guy essentially behind and driving total information awareness, when he was going around to the different bigwigs in the national security state and trying to build this thing, Alan Wade, you can see him here, very involved in that group. And what's worth pointing out here, this is from The Watchers, a book about the rise of America's surveillance state. If you want to go check this out, this is just an excerpt from Google Books to show you guys, right? But this is about Wade liking the idea of total information awareness because he thinks it would protect privacy. I mean, what a joke. But this is like his PR spin on why he liked total information awareness. But anyway, what it says here.
Washington move. Ron Paul points it out all the time. The Patriot Act has nothing to do with being patriotic. It's a classic ploy.
Right. So anyway, what's key here, Alan Wade and Poindexter had several more meetings, and the agency, the CIA, installed a node on the TIA network, meaning Alan Wade was the guy. Remember how I don't want to go too much into total information awareness, but it was run by DARPA, but they had collaborations with different intelligence agencies. Anyway, the point man for total information awareness at the CIA was Alan Wade. Okay, so Alan Wade is an important guy, and the fact that he's involved with this company right now is something we should not ignore, especially considering some of the other people here. Okay, so that was kind of a mouthful to explain. Anyway, now we're at Amit Yorin, who I've been teasing a little bit, okay? Because remember, go back here, for example, we have Darktrace at the top, we have Tenable. Okay, this is Amit Yorin's new company. Amit Yorin used to be president of RSA. This is his official bio. You'll see that it doesn't have everything about Amit Yorin in here, as we'll see in a moment. I had to piece together some different biographies, including some old ones. So he used to be head of RSA. We've talked about them being a major Israel-based, been around, one of the earliest cybersecurity companies ever, based out of Israel, has ties to their national security state. He was involved with the Department of Homeland Security. He doesn't describe his whole position here, but here's Amit Yorin again, resigning in 2004, the same year that total information awareness was also dismantled. Anyway, he was director of the National Cybersecurity Division at DHS that was created immediately after 9/11. Amit Yorin was put in that position even though he is not a US citizen. He is an Israeli citizen. He studied at West Point. But he was put there in this powerful position.
That's crazy.
After 9/11. Yep. So this talks about how he left his post abruptly. He got, I'm not exactly sure why he left. Maybe someone that is watching this has more information on that than me. Here is another bio of his talking about RSA, owned by Dell now. Anyway. At the U.S. Department of Defense, National Cybersecurity Director for DHS, was involved in a company called IBM Security Guardian.